Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. I think it's probably we've got most of the attendees have joined now. So I'm just going to hand over to Busayo, who is going to talk you through this webinar today. Over to you, Busayo.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. My name is Busayo. I work with a large teams group at Gearset, and I'm one of the PMs, product managers, looking after our pipelines products. Here's a brief overview of what we're going to be going through today. We're going to talk a bit about the state of just the admin's experience in Salesforce, and then we'll talk about some best practices for admins, and then we would go into a very brief pipelines demo. To start off, here are some quotes from Reddit that we've pulled where admins have talked about how they struggle today and what they struggle with. I imagine that this resonates with a lot of us today. The role of the admin in Salesforce has expanded over time, initially focused on user management and basic configuration. The admin role now often involves data management, security oversight, and even aspects of development. But there hasn't been a corresponding increase in resources and support. Recent surveys and studies have shown that the admin reports feeling overwhelmed due to the scope of their responsibilities, and the combination of routine tasks, project work, and emergency fixes can often lead to feeling overwhelmed. And in many instances, organizations don't leverage the best tools, leaving admins to handle an increasing number of manual tasks, and this accumulation can lead to feeling overwhelmed. The role of the admin has been impacted by how Salesforce itself has evolved over time. While DevOps has introduced a battle-tested way of working, adoption in Salesforce is still on the rise. And for many organizations yet to adopt DevOps, working in Salesforce can often mean that you're working in separate sandboxes or environments and are often unaware of what others are doing. And so overwriting someone's work is quite common. You would also possibly work with multiple environments with considerable difficulty in maintaining consistency across different Salesforce environments. Also, configuration drifts across orgs can be quite common with no way to ensure that environments are in sync, which can lead to deployment failures and generally unpredictable behavior. Due to lack of automation, release cycles can be slow, making it difficult to respond to change requests. And so you probably have very little insight to what's going on or even those dependencies. And generally, your work isn't interconnected with others. DevOps, for people who might not be very familiar with the term, was coined from software development and operations. And it's essentially a set of tools and processes that help team build, test, and release software quickly and efficiently. It's been around for quite some time, long before we started adopting it in Salesforce. And some benefits that it brings to the workflow are the introduction of CI/CD, which is continuous integration and continuous delivery or development, which has made it possible to automate quite a lot of manual processes. It's also created a constant way to work across different roles in Salesforce. And so working in Salesforce can become a lot more collaborative. And so dependencies are a lot more visible, and it's also started to introduce manual automated testing. So essentially, we're looking to go for a workflow that moves from separate silos and independent work by each role on the team to a much more inclusive workflow where everyone feels like they're involved in the process. Everyone knows where the stories have progressed to and how that interacts with other people's work. On top of that, there is much better communication across the teams. A DevOps pipeline has been likened to an assembly line. It focuses on automating and linking the various tasks carried out by the different teams, such as continuous integration by developers, test automation by testers, code deployment by release managers, and generally ensures that the final product, in this case, the deployment, meets the business requirements. But this can look different for teams based on the level of adoption and choice of tooling. In practice, adopting DevOps can look like a series of magic incantations for an admin who's not familiar with it. And that can often mean having to learn Git, which is very different from how you work. It also means picking up a lot of new concepts around version control, branching, pull request, merge conflicts, and many more terms. However, in reality, there are really mostly a bunch of steps in a workflow, similar to the car assembly example we gave. Some of the recommendations we'll be making are tools admins can use, which abstracts the more technical portions of DevOps, and that could look like this. There are a few tools on the market, and this is just one example, but I do work on Gearset, and so my example will be Gearset Pipelines. And here's an example of what that could look like, which we'll get into shortly. Each box in this on this page is where work needs to go, and that can be done with an org-to-org deployment using change sets today. These are the different stages teams could be on in their DevOps adoption journey. And as an admin, you're likely to be in an organization at one of these stages. Whether you're still adopting using change sets in your organization or adopting the most recommended practices, you're likely to experience some challenges, especially when you're working with developers in the same workflow. And here are some reasons why that can be. One of the biggest hurdles to cross is the cultural shift to DevOps. And many companies struggle to shift from how they've typically worked to a more collaborative and integrated approach that DevOps requires. This can mean that many people within the organization still work in fragmented ways. Developers tend to be exposed to DevOps practices naturally in their work, as it's been around for a while. However, admins still prefer to work declaratively. Additionally, many tools introduce quite complex concepts for admins and require additional training. The end result is that while a number of companies are adopting DevOps, there's still a gap between how admins and developers work. We've put together a few scenarios here, mostly to talk through what the experience of an admin would be based on what kind of team you're working on or where you are on your DevOps journey. And that's just to work up to talking about what this looks like in pipelines. I've heard an admin compare working with change sets to trying to play Jenga blindfolded, where one wrong move and everything just comes crashing down. Here, I imagine that I'm an admin in a team that's just starting to adopt DevOps, and I'm still quite used to working with change sets. A few challenges I'm likely to face are difficulty in tracking changes across my deployment, not knowing when I've done something I shouldn't have done, as no one is reviewing my changes, and having very little visibility into what is being deployed. A few things that could help to consider if you are experiencing this today. If you are limited to using change sets, then I would say you need to focus on planning and preparation, break down your task into bite-sized pieces, and map out your deployment plan. I'd say you can think of this as your game plan to avoid surprises when you're making your deployments. Creating checklists of all the components you want to deploy can also help here, as it can reduce the chances of incomplete deployments. You also want to look out for dependencies, and since change sets don't automatically include those, you want to manually add related components. If you can install extensions in your work, then a Chrome extension like Salesforce Inspector or change set helper can help you surface those dependencies. And if you are new to using change sets, then the advice is always to start small, as this makes deployments easier to manage and debug and reduces the chances of disruptive issues occurring. In the medium to long term, I'd say that getting familiar with DevOps and more of the DevOps concept will bring a lot of benefits to your work. And I would say getting familiar with this is probably more sustainable in the long term. However, if you don't have restrictions on tooling, you can consider using software like Gearset. Again, the other examples here, this is just the one I'm most familiar with. It can help with packaging and dependencies, and also change tracking, as it brings a lot of visibility into what is being deployed. In this example here that I'm going to play shortly, I'm an admin that needs to do an org-to-org deployment, which I can also do using change sets. But I just wanted to show how tooling can start to make it visible, more visible here. Here I'm connecting my Salesforce source and target orgs, and I'm able to select specific changes I want to deploy and see what this looks like in the source and in the target. There are a few options to see what is new, what has changed, and what has been deleted. And when I'm comparing this on target, additionally, I can start to see missing dependencies when I'm for the change I'm putting through. And eventually, it gives me the detailed list of the validated and deployed components. Again, this is just one example of how tooling can bring visibility into what is going on in your org-to-org deployments. In this scenario, I'm an admin who's struggling in a DevOps process where it's been adopted. I have to work in a really fast-paced environment, which means that there are a lot of change requests I need to process. I also have to work in a pipeline with automated testing and deployments in place. And beyond DevOps, I have to factor in security into how I work. It's also very likely that I'm working in a system that has existed for long periods of time. As an admin on this team, I'd say that you really need to embrace DevOps as it guarantees that you can work faster and a lot more effectively. An admin-friendly tool would increase your pace of work and reduces the chances of making mistakes. It also helps you to understand the impact of your work and also others on what you're doing. One thing to add here is that a good tool will help manage metadata types like flows and liking web pages without needing to learn XML, which is something admins also struggle with. Another recommendation is to set up some monitoring and alerts to stay on top of deployments and events to know when those have failed or to know when something requires attention. Lastly, I'd say that you should also embrace tools that support static code analysis, vulnerability scanning, and also compliance checks. So now we will go into a very quick pipelines demo. Just checking that that comes out fine. So in this pipeline, right. So each of these boxes represents a CI job. You can think of this CI job as a connection between where your work stays, which is your repository, and your Salesforce org, which would be UAT or main in this case. On this team that I'm on, I work with Tom, and both of us have our sandboxes connected to this pipeline. Now, before coming here, I've created a new flow in Salesforce and also a Lightning web page, and I want to take that change into my pipeline. At this point, I would need to then come in here to put that change in, and this process is generally defined as committing your change. Essentially, I would come here, see all the user stories that have been assigned to me, and select one of them. And this automatically creates a branch name for me. You can think of a branch as a folder for all the work you're doing. So essentially, you're taking the work in your org and then committing to this branch, which is how you put it into the pipeline. I will now start a comparison here. Here, as I've shown before, we're able to see all the changes that have been pulled. So I guess I can see what has changed in my sandbox since the last change I made to production. And I can see the new changed and deleted items here. But more importantly to call out here is this is the flow that I'm looking to work with. And we can see using Gearset's flow visualizer that looks just how I expect it to be rendered and isn't just XML that as an admin, I might struggle to understand. This is quite similar with the Lightning page, where the change is being rendered here as I would want or expect it to show in the final environment. And so I will select my flow and take that through to commit it. This is where would potentially surface any dependencies that you might be missing that you haven't selected as you're taking this change through. But nothing shows up here. I would go here to my pre-deployment summary. Now, essentially, what I've done is I've saved the work I have done in Salesforce into this branch, which essentially is a holder for it. You can do this as many times as you want to. Let's say, for instance, this flow that I'm working on then had a label change or something else was added. All I need to do is essentially commit more changes. And so you can think of committing as just saving the work into the branch. I can do this as many times as I want to before I'm ready to move that change forward. The next thing we have here is an integration environment. This essentially would be where my work and Tom's work would be merged into the pipeline. And it does a couple of things. One example is that it's possible that myself and Tom have made changes to the same fields, in which case a conflict will arise, which is referred to as a merge conflict. And in that situation, you would need to pick the change that you would like to take forward. That would look a little like this in a tool like Gearset. So we will fetch the conflicts, which shouldn't take long. Not sure why it's taken a few more times. Yeah, so that looks a little like this, where the two changes will be surfaced, and then you're able to select the one that you would like, or the version you like for each of these, and then mark that as resolved, and then commit that merge. I should also add that if someone else has worked in my sandbox and sort of had this clashing change, it would show up similarly here in Gearset. Now, my change that I made to the flow is still right here in my sandbox, and I would want to move it here. The process of requesting that that change be moved from my sandbox into the next environment is generally referred to as creating a pull request. And in that situation, you can easily do that in a tool that brings sort of all the tools together. Now that pull request has been created, and we would see that show up here very shortly. This is really just a quick overview into what working in the pipeline will feel like and the benefits it brings to you, like being able to resolve conflict and also being able to visualize the different types that you are working with in Salesforce. Once this change here has been accepted, there's a conflict here. I'll just pick another one, and I can promote that change into the next environment, which is UAT. Here, I can go ahead and test it, and if everything looks good, I can continue to promote it forward until I get to main, where I can have it in the final version. Besides tooling, I'd say that the conversation around admins and how admins work is an ongoing one. And I would say that over time, we need to talk about resource allocation and also having clear definitions for this role. If you do want to pick up or learn a bit more concepts around DevOps or pipelines, there are free courses at devopslaunchpad.com that you can pick up and take. However, if you do want to try any of the things I've shown here for free, you can start at gearset.com. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Basayo. We do have a question. We have two questions actually, and we have a bit of time. So perhaps you could answer these for us.
Sure.
So the first question is, can you set permissions on who can promote?
Yes, definitely. And so there are different permission levels. Um, I might be able to, I don't think I can get to that in the call, but yes, you can set permissions on who can promote. And that generally, not just on who can promote, but over a number of other activities in pipelines. And that generally gives you good control over who's able to do what and make what is happening a lot more predictable.
Great. Thank you. Um, and the other question that we had through is, do you have to have a release pipeline to be doing DevOps?
Actually, I'll say no. And the best practice is not to even start with the release pipelines if you're new to doing DevOps. Um, we actually have seen that a gradual adoption is usually the recommendation here, um, because there's quite a bit involved. You need to change the way you work, which are more cultural shifts, and you need to gradually improve your process until the point where you work up into using pipelines. Um, so one start can be adopting Git, where you can start to version control your metadata, and then maybe move on from there. But I wouldn't say that going from where you are to release pipelines is even recommended. I'll say starting small and moving up is generally the best practice.
Great, thank you. We've had one final one through in the Q&A, which is what are the differences between Salesforce DevOps Center and Gearset?
Um, I'd say that Gearset itself it brings a couple of benefits that maybe you might not find at DevOps Center. A lot of it brings collaboration in just on your team, but also in how we're able to visualize the different metadata that you deploy. An example that I gave here is the flow visualizer or even the Lighting web pages, where you're able to visualize them a lot better, which brings more transparency that you wouldn't actually find in DevOps Center.
Great, thank you. Um, so I think we'll probably wrap up soon, with the time being what it is. Um, but yeah, I'd love to say thank you to you, Paseo, and to everybody for joining today. Hopefully this session was helpful for you. As I said before, we'll send an email out to everybody who's signed up so you can jump into um, more of these topics again. And if you have any questions, just get in touch with us via our website. You can send us an email. We've got a in-app chat that is live and very quick responses there. So yeah, we're happy to help if there are any follow-up questions. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.